They've called me Speedy my whole life. It's not even creative. It started as a joke, because I'm the opposite of Speedy, because I'm disabled, because I've used a chair most of my life, because I'm homebound more than I want to admit. It stuck the way nicknames do when people think they're being kind. I'm bringing it up because it mattered to someone else first. I grew up in the 90s in a neighborhood where you didn't lock your doors during the day unless you were leaving for Real. Mostly Latino families, mostly kids running in packs, bikes piled on lawns, somebody's mom yelling a name out a screen door like it was a siren. My legs are the only thing in my life that didn't keep up. I didn't wake up one morning and suddenly not walk. It was slower, meaner than that. Month by month, a little less balance, a little less distance, a little more falling. And because it was slow, everyone adjusted in tiny steps until the chair wasn't temporary anymore. It was just mine. Along with the legs going, something else stayed with me. I talked to myself, not the way people say they talk to themselves. Not, where'd I put my keys under your breath? I mean full-on conversations. Questions. Answers. Laughing at a punchline nobody told. Arguing in the driveway like the air had an opinion. My family called a quirk. Kids do weird stuff. Disabled kids do weirder stuff. Everybody decided it was harmless because I still had friends and I still went outside and I wasn't staring at corners whispering about blood or whatever people expect. And to be fair, I wasn't whispering to corners. I was talking to Juan. I met him so young I can't pin the exact day. 5, 6, somewhere in there. I only remember the feeling of him being there like he'd always been there. He lived a block away, the way kids say when they don't actually know addresses. He was about my age, skinny, dark hair that always looked wet even when it wasn't. And he had this thing where he'd watch your face instead of your eyes. Like he was reading the words off your mouth. Juan came over almost every day. We did what kids did back then. Ninja Turtles, X-Men, Animaniacs. He'd sit on the curb next to me while my chair was half on the grass, half on the sidewalk. We'd make up stupid dares. We'd throw pebbles at cans. He'd push me when my arms got tired and pretend he was the engine of a race car, making those ridiculous noises that made me laugh so hard I'd get dizzy. He wasn't mean. He wasn't imaginary friend creepy. He didn't tell me to hurt animals or set fires. He didn't say, "Hey, Speedy, let's go play in the sewer." He just showed up, and I never questioned the parts one should have questioned. I never questioned why he got quiet around adults. I never questioned why he only showed up when I was already outside. I never questioned why he never knocked, never rang, never came in through the front door like every other kid did. One just appeared in the yard like he'd been waiting behind the fence. And I accepted it the way kids accept weather. If you're waiting for the first time he did something scary, I wish I could tell you it was obvious. I wish I could say the hair on my arm stood up the first day, and I knew. The truth is, the scary part didn't start as one did a scary thing. The scary part started as everybody else acting like one was never there at all. It happened in little ways first. The kind of stuff you brush off because you're a kid and adults are busy. One would be sitting next to me on the curb, and my mom would come out with a plate of cut fruit and go, "Here, me, Joe," and hand it straight to me like there wasn't another set of hands right there. One would stare at the watermelon and not say anything. I'd break a piece in half and hand it to him, and it would just drop. Let my fingers let go into nothing, like I'd thrown it on the concrete. He'd laugh and say, "You always do that," and I'd get embarrassed like I'd messed up a magic trick. Sometimes my dad would be backing out of the driveway, and Juan would be right there near the curb, and I'd do that panic kid thing like, "Dad, stop," and my dad would slam the brake and look at me like I'd lost my mind. "What? What are you doing?" One would be standing inches from the bumper, and my dad's eyes would pass over him like he was a shadow. Then one would step back onto the grass without any urgency, just annoyed like my dad was the one being dramatic. It became a game. One would dare me to get adults to notice. Say my name, he'd tell me. Say it loud. So I would. "Juan's here," I'd say. "Juan wants to watch the movie." My mom would barely glance. "Okay, but you're not staying up too late." Like she'd heard, "My friend's here." And that was good enough. She never said, "Who?" She never said, "What one?" Not until later. The first time someone told me one wasn't real, I laughed so hard I choked. It was my cousin, older than me, the kind of older kid who liked to push buttons. He came over one afternoon and found me in the driveway talking to Juan. And he did this fake concerned face. "Bro," he said, "who are you talking to?" "Juan," I said like it was obvious. He looked around like he was searching for hidden speakers. "You got no Juan?" "Yes, I do," I said, and Juan was right there, sitting on the curb, flicking pebbles at ants. My cousin leaned in close to my face. "You got no Juan," he repeated, slower, like he was trying to teach me words. Then he started laughing, loud and mean. Speedy got an imaginary friend. Juan's smile died instantly. He didn't look at my cousin. He looked at me, and the look wasn't sad. It was more like warning, like don't do this. I got angry. I got that hot, humiliated anger that makes your ears ring. I shoved my cousin with both hands, and he stumbled back and went, "Whoa," like I'd surprised him like he forgot I had arms. My aunt came out yelling at me for pushing. I screamed, he started it, and I pointed at my cousin, and then at Juan like, "Look, he's right there, he can back me up." My aunt's face went tight. "Who's he?" "Juan," I said. My aunt's eyes did that thing where they softened for a second like she feels sorry for you. "Okay," she said carefully, "but don't push people, Mijo." After she went back inside, my cousin wiped the smile off his face and said, "You're weird as hell," and walked away. Juan didn't laugh it off. He stared at the street. He stared at the houses. He stared at the end of the block like he was listening for something. "Why'd you do that?" he asked. "Because he's a dick," I said. Juan's jaw worked like he was chewing something. "Don't talk about me to them," he said. Not loud, not angry, just flat, like a rule. I rolled my chair closer. "What?" He finally looked at me. "They don't like it." "Who?" One didn't answer. He just flicked another pebble, and this time it didn't hit the ground. It sort of vanished halfway down, like it went into a crack in the air. That should have been enough. That should have been a moment I got goosebumps and ran inside. But I was a kid. I had a best friend who was different. I'd already accepted 100 things about my body that weren't fair. So I accepted one more thing. One had rules. Fine. The years went like that. If I'm honest, one did more for me than some of my real friends. There were kids who were nice until it got inconvenient, until pushing my chair up a hill wasn't fun anymore, until they realized they couldn't sprint away and leave me behind without feeling like assholes. One never cared. He never complained about the chair. He never acted like he was doing me a favor. He'd push me and keep talking like it was nothing. He'd sit with me on the sidewalk when everyone else went running into someone's backyard. He'd come back when the other kids forgot. And the whole time, adults didn't acknowledge him. Not in a he's shy way. In a he doesn't exist way. In elementary school, teachers would say, "No talking," and I'd laugh under my breath because Juan was making faces and they'd snap, "Speedy, focus." I try to explain, "Juan," and the teacher would cut me off like, "We're not doing that today." In middle school, I started doing it less. Not because Juan went away, but because middle school is a slaughterhouse. You learn real fast which parts of yourself get you eaten. I still talked to him when I was home, when I was outside alone, when it was safe. One didn't like the inside of the house. That was another rule. If I was inside, he'd hover near doorways. He'd stand in a hall and look into my room like my room had a smell he hated. If I asked him to come in, he'd say, "Nah," and change the subject. There were days I didn't see him, and I'd feel this ugly hollow in my chest like I'd been dumped. Then I'd go outside and he'd be there, sitting on the curb like nothing happened. As we got older, I noticed other weird patterns. One never talked about his family. Never. If I asked, he'd shrug. If I pushed, he'd get irritated. "Why you care?" he'd say. "You got too many questions." One never came over when my whole family was in the yard. If it was a barbecue, if cousins were over, if there were too many adults moving around, he wouldn't show. But he always came when I was alone. When I was about 14, my mom got really into taking pictures. Disposable cameras, then one of those chunky digital ones. She was trying to capture memories, I guess, or prove to herself that she was doing a good job raising a kid whose body kept betraying him. She took photos of everything. Birthdays, holidays, random Tuesdays, me and my siblings making faces, me and my friends sitting on the curb. Juan was with me in half those moments. I remember it like I remember my own name. Juan's hand on my shoulder, Juan leaning into the frame, Juan behind me making horns with his fingers. And still, he never showed up in any picture. At the time, I didn't notice. Because why would I? I'd see the flash, hear the click, and go right back to being a kid. But there were little hints. Sometimes my mom would print photos, and there'd be this weird empty space next to me like the composition was wrong. Like the photographer was aiming for two people and only captured one. Sometimes there'd be a blur by my chair, like motion, like somebody moved last second. I asked my mom once, why is it like that? She looked at it and said, like what? Like there's space. She squinted. You always notice weird stuff, she said. I set it down. One watched me from the curb while I looked at that photo, and he looked satisfied, like he liked being a secret. The first time my parents said one wasn't real, it didn't happen like some dramatic confrontation. It was stupid. It was laundry. I was maybe 16, sitting in the living room, and I was laughing at something Juan said. One was standing in the hallway, half hidden behind a corner, like usual. My mom walked by carrying a basket, and she stopped and said, "Who are you talking to?" I was already annoyed because I'd been asked that question my whole life. "Juan," I said. My mom didn't laugh. She didn't play along. She just set the basket down slow like her arms suddenly got heavy. "Speedy," she said, and her voice was too calm. "There is no one." My stomach dropped so fast I swear I felt it in my throat. "Yes, there is." My mom shook her head. "No, baby." I looked toward the hallway. One wasn't smiling. He wasn't even hiding. He was standing fully in the opening like, fine, let's do this. I pointed at him. Right there. My mom followed my finger, and her eyes hit the spot and slid right over it. She blinked like the air was bright. "There's nobody there," she said, and I heard fear in her voice for the first time. Real fear, like she thought something was wrong with my brain. My dad came in from the kitchen. "What's going on?" My mom kept her voice low. "He's talking about Juan again." My dad's mouth tightened. "We talked about this," he said, like I was lying. Like I was making trouble. "I'm not doing anything." I snapped. I could feel my face getting hot. "He's here." My dad looked at me like I was a problem he was tired of solving. "Speedy," he said, "there's never been a Juan." Juan's eyes were on me, so hard it felt like pressure. Like my skull was being squeezed. "You're all fucking with me," I said. I didn't usually swear at my parents. It came out because I didn't have anything else. I didn't have logic. I didn't have proof. I just had Juan right there and my parents acting like I was insane. My mom flinched. "Don't talk to us like that." "Then stop lying," I said. My dad's voice went sharp. "Go to your room." I sat there shaking, staring past them into the hallway where Juan stood like a stain. And the craziest part was Juan looked bored. Like adults denying him wasn't new. Like the only interesting part was watching me crack. That night, Juan showed up outside my window. Not inside. Never inside. He stood under the streetlight, the orange light making his hair look black. He tilted his head up and whistled soft. I opened my window and hissed, "What the hell is happening?" He shrugged. "They don't see me," he said, like he was telling me the sky was blue. "They used to," I whispered. They used to at least act like you were just quiet. Juan Smilowisha. "No, they didn't." I stared at him. "Yes, they did. They brought fruit out. One cut me off, sudden and irritated. "They never brought me shit." He stepped closer to the house, and I swear the air around him looked denser, like heat waves without heat. "You did," he said. "You always did." My throat went dry. "So what? They just ignored you forever?" One didn't answer. He just watched my face like he was waiting for me to figure out. "What are you?" I asked, and it came out in this tiny voice that pissed me off. Juan's eyes narrowed. "I'm your friend." "Don't," I said. "Don't do that. Tell me." Juan leaned in closer, and I caught a smell through the screen. Not like cologne or sweat. Something cold and wet. Like the inside of a freezer. Like rain on concrete at night. "Don't ask too much," he said. "You don't need that." I felt tears build up out of nowhere, angry tears. "Why does everyone say you're not real?" Juan's mouth twitched again. Not a smile. more like a muscle remembering how to make one. Because they're not you. And then he stepped back into the darkness between streetlight pools like it was a curtain, and he was gone. After that, my parents sent me to a therapist. I'm not saying that like it was cruel. They were scared. They were trying. They just didn't know what else to do with a teenage kid insisting his best friend existed when nobody else remembered him. The therapist was nice in that professional way. Soft voice, neutral face, office that smelled like lemon cleaner. She asked me questions like she was walking around a bomb. When did you first meet Juan? What does he say to you? Do you ever feel like Juan tells you to do things you don't want to do? I wanted to scream. Juan wasn't telling me to kill anybody. He wasn't pushing me to jump off roofs. He was just there. But the longer it went, the more I realized something. Every time I said Juan's name out loud in that office, the room felt colder. Not like the AC kicked on, like a draft from somewhere impossible. The therapist would shiver and pull her cardigan tighter and ask, "Are you cold? Idiliatanstein?" No, because I was starting to get it. Not the whole thing, but enough. One could do something to the air. And if the air changed, that meant he was real in the only way that mattered. I stopped saying his name in therapy. I started calling him my friend. The room stayed normal. The therapist relaxed. My mom relaxed. Everybody acted like progress was happening. One didn't like that. He showed up one afternoon while I was outside alone, and he didn't sit on the curb. He stood in front of my chair like he was blocking me from moving. His face was tight. "You didn't tell her," he said. "Tell her what?" I snapped. I was exhausted. I was sick of being treated like a head case. I was sick of my parents whispering when they thought I couldn't hear. Juan's eyes flicked toward the house. "You didn't tell her about me." "I did," I said. "She thinks I'm crazy." Juan leaned down until his face was close to mine. His eyes looked darker than they should have in daylight. "Don't make me a secret," he said. "I'm trying not to get locked in a hospital." I shot back. "You want that? You want them to take me away?" Juan stared at me like he was weighing something. Then his lips parted and he whispered, so quiet I almost didn't hear it, "They won't take you." The way he said it made my spine go cold. "How do you know?" I asked. Juan straightened up. "Because they can't," he said, and then he smiled like that was funny. I should have told my parents then. I should have begged them to move. I should have done anything. But you have to understand what it's like to have one constant in your life when your body keeps changing. When your independence gets smaller and smaller. When you watch your friends grow into bodies that do what they want and yours becomes a list of limitations. One was there for all of it. One didn't pity me. One didn't treat me like a project. One treated me like me. So I kept him. And then time did what time does. High school ended. Friends scattered. My condition got worse. I needed more help. Caretakers came into the picture. People who weren't family, who came on a schedule, who learned my routine, who helped me transfer, who made small talk like it was part of the job. Juan hated the caretakers. He never showed when they were around, but I'd feel him in the corners. I'd feel that slight pressure on the air, that cold edge, and I'd catch myself pausing mid-sentence like I was waiting for permission to speak. Sometimes the caretaker would say, "You okay?" And I'd force a smile and go, "Yes, sorry," like I just blanked out. I left for community college for a while. Not in a dorm, just classes, getting driven, trying to build a life. One came less. Or maybe I noticed him less because I was exhausted all the time and my brain was full of assignments and pain and trying not to drown in my own frustration. But he never fully went away. The big proof moment, the one people always latch onto when I tell this, didn't happen until I was 20 and my mom gave me a photo book. Graduation gift. She'd put everything in it. Birthdays, holidays, Christmas mornings. That one time my cousins tried to dye my hair and my dad got mad. All the friends I did growing up, frozen in glossy pages. It was sweet. It made my chest ache in a way I didn't expect. Then I started flipping faster. Because one wasn't there. Not one picture. Not one. I went back to earlier pages. Me at 5 with cake. Me at 7 with my siblings. Me at 10 with a pile of action figures. Me at 12 on the curb with a group of kids. Kids I recognized. Kids who existed. Kids whose faces matched names my family said out loud. No Juan. And it wasn't just he's not in the frame. There were spots where he should have been. Empty spaces right next to me. An arm around my shoulder that should have been there but wasn't. A gap in the line of kids like someone had been cut out with scissors and the paper healed itself. I felt sick. I said, "Mom." She looked happy, proud. "You like it?" "Where's Juan?" I asked. She blinked. "What?" I tried to laugh like it was nothing. "Juan, my friend. He's in like every memory I have." My mom's smile faded just a little. "Speedy." "No, look," I said, flipping pages, jabbing my finger at photos. "He was right there. He was at my 9th birthday. He was always." My mom's eyes got wet instantly. That scared me more than anything. Because my mom doesn't cry easy. She's the type who cries alone in the bathroom, not in front of her kids. "Baby," she said, and her voice shook. "There has never been a Juan." I slammed the book shut so hard the cover popped. "Stop saying that." My dad heard the noise from the kitchen and came in. "What now?" "He's doing the Juan thing," my mom whispered. I hated the way she said it. Like it was a symptom. Like it was a flare-up. I looked at my dad like, "Help me. Tell her she's wrong. Tell her you remember him at least. Tell her I'm not crazy." My dad just sighed, long and tired. "We've been over this," he said. Something cracked in me right there. I didn't even yell. I just felt this cold, dead certainty settle into my bones. If one wasn't in those photos, if nobody remembered him, then either I was insane or I'd been living alongside something that made itself real to me and only me. That night, one showed up outside my window again. I didn't open it. I just stared through the glass. He smiled and waved like we were normal. I got out my phone and recorded. Hands shaking. I pointed the camera at the window. I whispered, "Wave again." Juan tilted his head, amused, and waved slowly. On the screen, there was nothing. Streetlight, tree shadow, my own reflection like a ghost. I lowered the phone and looked with my eyes. One was still there, grinning. I felt my stomach fold in on itself. I mouthed, "What are you?" One put his palm against the glass. The glass frosted under his hand. Not like steam, like ice. Like the temperature dropped so fast the moisture in the air panicked and clung to the window. I jumped back hard enough my chair bumped the dresser. My heart hammered like it wanted out. Juan's smile didn't change. He held his hand there and watched me like he was watching an animal learn. Then he pulled his hand away and the frost didn't melt right away. It stayed for a few seconds in the shape of his fingers. That's when I started to understand the rules weren't for him. They were for me. I didn't sleep. I sat there with my phone in my lap, staring at the window. When the caretaker came in the morning, she saw my face and went, "You look like hell." I almost told her. I almost said, "Something is outside my window and it knows my name." But I didn't. Because what would she do? Call my parents? Call an ambulance? Call the cops and have them show up and find nothing? So I did what I've always done. I acted normal. I got older. My life narrowed. I moved out for a while and then moved back because independence is expensive when your body needs extra help. Friends visited less. Caretakers rotated. My parents got older. I started spending more time alone in my room because it was easier than hearing people talk about me like I wasn't there. And Juan stayed close in a way that didn't feel like friendship anymore. He started showing up inside the house more. Not fully. Not walking into the kitchen like he lived there. But I'd see him in mirrors behind me, just for a second. I'd catch a shape in the hallway. I'd hear the soft creak of floorboards where nobody was. Sometimes, when I was alone late at night, I'd hear this faint tapping from the other side of my door, like a fingernail testing the wood. I'd hold my breath and wait. The tapping would stop. Then I'd hear something else, a slow inhale, like somebody taking their time. And then, when I'd finally work up the nerve to hit the remote and turn on the lights, everything would be normal. Warm, silent. I kept trying to convince myself it was stress, sleep paralysis, anxiety. Whatever label made it less real. Then came the first night it touched the world in a way nobody could explain away. I was about 20. I transferred out of my chair and into bed. Caretaker gone. Family out. I was alone. My room felt normal when I turned the lights off. The usual hum of the house. The faint street noise. my fan pushing stale air around. I lay on my side, facing my closed bedroom door. I heard it creak, not a settling noise, a hinge noise, slow, controlled. The gap at the bottom of the door widened, and a strip of hallway darkness slid across my carpet like a tongue. The temperature dropped so fast it stole the air from my lungs. My breath fogged. In my own room. In summer. Every muscle in my body went rigid, not like I'm scared, but like my nervous system had been told, freeze or die. Footsteps crossed the carpet. Light. Patient. Like whatever was walking knew exactly where the loud spots were and avoided them. It stopped behind me. I felt breathing. Not on my neck. Not warm. Cold. Like air pulled from deep underground. I couldn't turn. I couldn't even twitch. My eyes watered from how hard I was holding them open. Something leaned closer, and I swear I felt the mattress dip like a knee pressed into it. My hand found the remote by pure luck. My thumb mashed the button. Every light in the room snapped on at once. The cold vanished like a lie. The breathing stopped. The pressure on the mattress lifted. I jerked around so hard pain shot through my hip. Nothing. My door was wide open. That was the only proof. The door, wide open like somebody had walked through it and never bothered to close it behind them. I didn't sleep. I sat there with my back against the headboard, lights on, staring at that open doorway until sunrise. In the morning, I asked my caretaker if she'd come by during the night. She looked offended. No, I was home with my son. You okay? I told her I'd had a bad dream. I hated myself for lying, but I also hated the idea of her looking at me the way my mom looked at me when I said Juan's name. So I kept it to myself. Years later, it happened again. Not exactly the same, but close enough that my stomach recognized it before my brain did. My parents were home that time. I woke up already freezing. Not just cold, that unnatural, invasive cold that feels like it's inside your bones. I called out for my dad. My voice came out thin and shaky. He rushed in half awake, hair sticking up, and the second he stepped into my room, he stopped dead. "What's going on?" he asked, and then his face shifted. Confusion, then something like dread. Why is it so cold in here? I hadn't said a word about the temperature. My throat closed. I could barely get the words out. Were you in here?" "No," he said immediately. He looked around like the room might explain itself. He walked to the window, touched it, frowned. He checked the vent like the AC was broken. Then he went into the hallway and checked the thermostat like numbers could fix this. Everything was normal. Locks were normal. Windows were locked. Nothing forced, nothing open. He came back and tried to smile like he could make it okay. "Probably the AC kicked on weird," he said. "You okay? You want another blanket?" I nodded because I couldn't do anything else. He tucked the blanket like I was 5 again. The whole time, I felt something watching from the corner near my closet. Not a presence like Ghost Story, more like the air had weight. My dad turned to leave, and right as he stepped into the hallway, the floor creaked beside my bed. One soft creak, like someone shifting their weight after standing still too long. My dad froze with his hand on the doorframe. He looked back at me. "Did you move?" he asked. I couldn't even answer. My mouth wouldn't work. He stared at the floor, then at my bed, then at me. His face went pale in this slow, reluctant way like his brain was trying to reject what his senses were telling him. "Stop playing," he said, but his voice wasn't angry. It was scared. "I'm not," I whispered. My dad stood there for a long beat. Then he backed out of the room without turning his back on the inside. He pulled the door mostly closed, leaving it cracked. I heard him walk down the hall, and I heard him stop outside my mom's room. He didn't whisper. He said it out loud like he needed it to be real. "It's freezing in his room." My mom mumbled something half asleep. My dad's voice dropped lower, but I still heard enough. "And the floor," he started, then cut himself off like he didn't want to finish the sentence. After that night, my dad stopped brushing off my bad dreams. He didn't say Juan's name. He didn't say anything supernatural. He just started double-checking locks every night like it was a ritual. Like if he did it the right way, the house would behave. And Juan started doing something that made my skin crawl. He started waiting for me to talk. not the other way around. I'd be sitting alone, watching TV, and I'd catch myself starting to mumble, just habit, just me thinking out loud. And there'd be this pause, half a second too long, like the air was listening. Like I had to make the first move. Sometimes I'd say something stupid like, "This show's trash," and I'd feel that cold edge roll through the room like a response. Not words. Not yet. Just that shift. Like heard you. Sometimes I'd hear a soft sound from the hallway. A breath. A foot adjusting. I stopped saying my thoughts out loud. It didn't stop the feeling. There were days I thought I was finally outgrowing it. Weeks where nothing happened. I'd almost convinced myself I'd been a lonely kid and my brain made a friend, and now my brain was making ghosts because it missed that friend. Then the cold would hit out of nowhere while I was brushing my teeth, or while I was scrolling on my phone, and I'd feel my shoulders go rigid before I even knew why. I tried to get practical about it. I bought a cheap temperature sensor. I bought a little motion camera for my doorway, one of those home security ones. I set it up to record overnight. The first night, nothing. Second night, nothing. Third night, it recorded a clip at 3:17 a.m. I woke up in the morning with my chest tight, like I'd been running. I checked the app. The video showed my room in night vision. My bed, my door, the strip of hallway visible under the door. At 3:17, the light under my door dimmed like something blocked it. Then the temperature graph dipped hard, like 10 degrees in a minute. The camera audio picked up a sound that made my mouth go dry. Breathing. Slow. Careful. Then my door didn't open. It didn't creak. It just wasn't closed anymore. 1 second it was shut. Next second it was open 3 inches like the frame had let go of it. The hallway was black. And in that black, the camera couldn't see a person. But it saw something else, this faint distortion, like heat waves again, like the air was bending around a shape that didn't reflect light the right way. The distortion leaned in. The camera went static for 2 seconds. Then the distortion leaned back. The door was shut again. I watched it 3 times before I realized I was holding my breath, so hard my head hurt. I took the clip to my dad. I didn't go to my mom. My mom would cry, and crying would turn into a family crisis where everybody yelled and prayed, and somebody called a priest, and then we'd all pretend it worked because we needed it to. My dad sat at the kitchen table with his coffee and watched the clip with his jaw clenched so hard the muscle jumped. When it ended, he stared at the screen like it had insulted him. "You set this up?" he asked. "Yeah." "You didn't do anything," he said, and he sounded angry again, like anger was easier than fear. "I can't walk." I snapped before I could stop myself. How the hell would I do that? My dad flinched, and that made me feel like shit, but I didn't take it back. I was tired of people acting like my reality was a story I was telling for attention. He rubbed his face and stared at the table. "Okay," he said. "Okay." Then he did something that scared me more than the clip. He said, "Don't say his name." I blinked. "What?" My dad didn't look at me. "Don't say it," he repeated. "Don't talk about it out loud." My stomach turned. "You think it's—" My dad finally looked at me, and his eyes were wet in the way my mom's eyes got wet when she tried not to cry. "I don't know what I think," he said, "but I know when you talk about it, it gets worse." My mouth went numb. "You remember," I said barely. My dad swallowed hard. "I remember you talking to somebody," he admitted. "I remember you calling him Juan." He said it like it burned. "And you still told me he wasn't real," I said, and I hated how my voice cracked. My dad slammed his coffee cup down too hard. "Because what was I supposed to do?" he snapped. "Tell my kid he's got something in his life I can't see? Tell him it might not be a kid at all? You think that helps?" We stared at each other across the table, both breathing too fast. Then my dad's voice dropped. Your mom used to hear you at night," he said. "In your room, talking, laughing. And sometimes," he stopped. His throat bobbed. "Sometimes it sounded like someone else answered." My skin prickled so hard it hurt. I whispered, "When—" My dad shook his head. "When you were little," he said. "Before you ever told us a name. Before you ever said one." He looked away like he couldn't stand the memory. "We thought you were just playing." A cold thought slid into my mind, quiet and sharp. What if one didn't start when I named him? What if I named what was already there? After that conversation, My dad started doing weird stuff around the house. Salt at the windows, a small cross above my door. He'd act like it was normal, like he was just being old school, but he did it with this tense energy like he was trying to build a fence out of habits. It didn't stop. If anything, it made one angrier. I started hearing him in the gaps of sound. Not words, not yet, but little things. A throat clearing in an empty room. A soft chuckle that didn't come from the TV. A sigh from the hallway when I turned off the lights. I stopped playing music at night because I realized silence was safer. If it was loud, I wouldn't notice the small stuff until it was too close. Then one night, I did something stupid. I talked to myself. It was late. I was alone. Caretaker had left. My parents were asleep. My room felt too quiet, too still, like the house was listening. I was scrolling on my phone, half asleep, and I muttered, "I'm losing it." There was that pause again, that half second too long. Then in the coldest, flattest voice I've ever heard in my life, right beside my bed, something whispered, "No, you're not." My whole body seized. My phone slipped from my hand and hit the blanket, muted thud. I didn't move. I couldn't. The air in the room changed. Not just colder, thicker, like I was underwater, and every breath was work. The whisper came again, closer, like it was testing how much it could get away with. "You're finally listening," it said. I squeezed my eyes shut so hard I saw stars. My heart hammered against my ribs like it wanted to break out. Every part of me wanted to hit the lights, but my hand wouldn't cooperate. My fingers felt numb. The mattress dipped, not a little, not like the house settling, like somebody climbed onto the bed with me. I made this pathetic sound in my throat, half gasp, half sob. Something leaned close to my ear, and it didn't smell like a person. It smelled like wet concrete in winter, like a storm drain, like the inside of a freezer that hasn't been opened in months. "Say it," the voice breathed. I whispered, "Say what?" The answer came so soft, it was almost gentle. My name. The fear that hit me was different than anything before, because it wasn't just fear of being hurt. It was fear of a pattern, fear of a rule I didn't understand, but my body recognized anyway. Like if I said it, I'd be agreeing to something. My tongue felt thick. I swallowed and forced out one. The room dropped another 10 degrees. I heard a sound like someone smiling in the dark. "Good," one whispered. "That's it." The mattress dipped again, closer to my waist, like he was moving up the bed toward me. I finally got my hand to move. I groped for the remote, fingers clumsy and shaking, and I smashed the button. The lights snapped on. Warmth flooded back like a lie being told loudly. I whipped my head around. Nothing. Door closed. Room normal. But my skin didn't believe it. Because on the edge of my bed, right near where the dip had been, the blanket was frosted in a patch the size of a handprint. It wasn't wet. It wasn't spilled water. It was ice crystals, delicate and sharp, sparkling under my bedside lamp like a sick joke. I stared at it until my eyes burned. Then I did the only thing I could think to do. I called my dad. He answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. "What?" "I heard him," I said, and my voice sounded wrong, like it belonged to somebody else. "I heard one." There was a long silence on the phone. Too long. Then my dad said, very quietly, "Don't say it again." "I already did," I whispered. Another silence. Then my dad's voice tightened. "Stay awake," he said. "Turn the lights on. I'm coming." He didn't ask questions. He didn't argue. He didn't tell me it was a dream. He believed me. And that made me start shaking even harder. I sat there with every light blazing, staring at my door, staring at the frosted handprint slowly melting into damp fabric. My phone buzzed on the bed where it had fallen, screen lighting up with notifications I didn't read. The air felt normal, but normal didn't mean safe anymore. Normal just meant it was waiting. My dad's footsteps came down the hall fast, almost running, and I heard him stop right outside my door like he didn't want to cross the threshold. He knocked once hard. "Speedy?" "Yeah," I croaked. He opened the door and stepped in, and immediately his face changed. He didn't say, "Why is it cold this time?" Because it wasn't cold. It was something else. It was like the room had a pressure to it, like the air was heavier in here than in the hallway. My dad's eyes went straight to the bed, to the damp patch on the blanket. "What did it say?" he asked. My throat worked. It said, I stopped myself. I could feel the word wanting to jump out of my mouth like a reflex, like a hook. My dad shook his head sharply. "Don't," he warned. I swallowed hard. It told me to say his name. I whispered. My dad's jaw clenched. He looked around my room like he expected to catch someone standing in plain sight. Then he did something I've never seen him do. He sat on the edge of my bed, not on the frosted spot, just close enough that his weight made the mattress shift under me. And he stared at my doorway like he was daring something to try. For a minute, nothing happened. The house hummed. My fan pushed air. The world pretended. Then the hallway light outside my room flickered. Once. Twice. My dad didn't move. The temperature sensor on my nightstand beeped softly. My dad's eyes narrowed. "It's starting," he murmured, like he'd been expecting this exact thing. The air in the doorway darkened. Not like the light went out, but like something passed in front of it that didn't have a solid shape. That same distortion, like the world bending. My dad's hand clenched on the bedspread. His knuckles went white. The distortion slid closer, and the floor creaked in the hall like weight shifting. My dad's voice went rough. "Get out," he said. Not screaming, not praying, just command. The distortion paused. I felt something turn toward me, even though there was nothing to see. A whisper brushed my ear, so close it felt like breath through hair. "Tell him," it said. My dad didn't hear it. Or if he did, he didn't show it. He stared at the doorway like he was staring down a man. The whisper came again, patient, almost amused. "Tell him you love me." My stomach lurched. The floor creaked again, closer, and the hallway light flickered hard enough to buzz. My dad's face went tight with effort, like he was holding himself in place against the current. "Speedy," he said without looking at me. "Don't answer it." My mouth opened anyway. Not because I wanted to, because my brain had done it 1,000 times as a kid. Because my tongue knew the dance. Question, answer, pause, response. I bit down hard enough to taste blood. The distortion in the doorway pulsed like a thing breathing. Then, from the hallway, came a sound that wasn't a whisper. It was Juan's laugh. The exact laugh I remembered from the curb. The exact laugh that used to make me snort and wheeze and forget my legs for a second. It came out of the dark like it was being played from an old tape. My dad flinched so hard he actually jerked his head like something hit him. "You hear that?" I whispered, half relief, half terror. My dad's voice cracked. "Yeah," he said. The laugh stopped abruptly. The room went so silent I could hear the blood in my ears. Then the voice spoke again, not in my ear this time. In the doorway. Clear, calm, like it didn't need to hide anymore, because my dad had finally acknowledged it. Juan Said. My dad didn't answer. He just stared. The distortion thickened, and for a split second, under the flickering hall light, I saw something like a face. Not fully human, not fully anything. A suggestion of features arranged the way a person's face should be arranged, but wrong in the details, like somebody had learned humans from watching them through water. Juan's voice stayed soft. "You told him I wasn't real," he said. My dad's throat bobbed. "Leave," he managed. Juan laughed again, quieter. "Why?" he asked. "He's mine." The lights in my room dimmed like somebody was lowering a switch. My dad's hand shot out and grabbed mine, hard, like he was anchoring me. Juan's voice went warmer, almost tender, and it made me want to vomit. "Tell him," Juan said. "Tell him how long I've been here." The pressure in the room swelled. The temperature sensor beeped again. My breath fogged. My dad squeezed my hand so tight it hurt. Juan's voice slid in my ear one last time, private again, intimate. "If you don't tell him," it whispered, "I'll show him." And the floor beside my bed creaked like someone stepping up onto it. The floor beside my bed creaked like someone stepping up onto it. And my dad yanked my hand like he could pull me out of the room by grip alone. I couldn't move my legs worth a damn, but my shoulders worked, so I tried to drag myself higher on the mattress, away from the edge, away from that sound. It didn't help. The mattress dipped again. Slow, deliberate. like a person settling their weight, like the bed was making room. My dad's voice came out low and ugly. "Get out." Juan laughed under the hall light, and the light flickered like it was embarrassed. "You never talked to me before," he said. "You only talked about me." My dad didn't look at me. He stared at the doorway, like he was looking down the barrel of something. He squeezed my hand harder. My fingers went numb. The cold got worse. Not AC cold, dead cold, the kind that makes your teeth ache. "Speedy," my dad whispered, "keep your mouth shut." Juan's voice slid around the room, not loud, just everywhere. "Tell him," he said, and it wasn't a request. It was the way you tell someone to open a door they're standing in front of. "Tell him how you used to talk at night." My throat tightened. I could see the hallway through the crack of my doorway, and that distortion was there like a bruise on the air. It didn't need to step in. It already owned the space between. My dad shifted on the bed like he was bracing. The bed creaked under him and under something else. Something that didn't weigh right. Juan's laugh turned into that softer chuckle, like he was pleased with himself. "You feel it now," he told my dad. "You used to walk right past me." My dad forced out, "I don't care what you are. Leave him alone." Juan went quiet for a second. The silence felt like pressure. Then, "Say it again," Juan said, almost playful. "But mean it." My dad swallowed. I felt it through the way his grip changed, like his hand slipped a little with sweat. "Leave," he repeated, and his voice cracked. The hallway light buzzed, dimmed, flared. The cold spread across my blanket like frost crawling. I heard breathing again, right behind my ear, and I didn't turn because my body knew better. The breath was cold enough to sting. "Tell him you love me," Juan whispered to me. It was the same command from before, but nastier now that my dad was here. Like it wanted to make me betray him. Like I wanted to make my dad see me as the weak link. I bit the inside of my cheek. Blood filled my mouth. I held it there like a lock. The bed dipped closer to my hips. My dad's eyes flicked down for half a second like he felt it too. Juan's voice came from the doorway again, clearer. "You built little fences," he said, amused. "Salt, cross, locks. You think I come through doors?" My dad didn't answer. He leaned forward, shoulders tense, like he was ready to lunge at air. Then Juan did something worse than the cold. He made it feel familiar. The scent hit, that wet concrete winter smell, and along with it came the memory of the curb, the cartoons, the pebbles, the stupid car noises. My brain betrayed me. It tried to slide into that old groove where Juan was safe because Juan was my friend, because Juan was the only kid who didn't treat me like a burden. I felt tears burn up behind my eyes, and it pissed me off because it wasn't sadness. It was a reflex. Juan laughed softly. "There he is." My dad's grip tightened like he felt me slip. "Don't," he warned again. The hallway light snapped off. Not dimmed. Off. Like a switch flipped. My room light stayed on, but the doorway became a black mouth. The pressure in the room surged, and the mattress dipped hard, like something climbed up fully. The blanket dragged toward the edge like invisible fingers tugging. I made a sound I hated, a half-choked gasp, and Juan's voice was instantly right there by my ear. "Say my name," it whispered. I could feel my jaw wanting to move, the way your body wants to scratch when something itches. It wanted the pattern. It wanted the ritual. Say it, and the world makes sense again. My dad did something sudden. He let go of my hand and slammed his palm down onto the edge of the bed, right where the blanket was being pulled, like he was trying to pin whatever was there. The bed jerked. My dad flinched like he touched ice and fire at the same time. His face contorted, not pain like a burn, more like his skin couldn't decide whether to go numb or blister. He hissed through his teeth. "What the?" Juan laughed. "Delighted. You touched me." My dad yanked his hand back, shaking it like he'd stuck it in a snowbank. His fingers were red, then white at the tips like frostbite starting. He stared at his own hand like it was proof, and he didn't want it. "You're not," he started, and his voice failed. He swallowed hard. "You're not taking him." Juan's voice went flat. "He already gave me everything." The room tilted, not physically, but my brain did that thing where it feels like the floor drops. My stomach rolled. My dad looked at me finally, and the fear in his eyes wasn't just fear of Juan. It was fear of what I might say, fear of what I might admit, because there was truth there, a gross truth I didn't want to touch. Idaluba Juan, not romantic, not weird, just kid love, that desperate attachment when you're lonely and stuck and somebody makes you feel normal. And Juan had been there. Always. Too always. Juan's whisper slid in again, intimate. Tell him what you used to do, it said. Tell him what you promised. I didn't promise shit, I rasped, and the words came out before I could stop them. The room went still like it listened. My dad's eyes widened. What did you just say? Juan Chaquil, pleased. Oh, now he talks. My dad leaned closer to me. Speedy, he said, urgent. What did you promise? I stared at my damp blanket, at the frost that had melted into a dark patch, and my own shaking hands. My mouth tasted like pennies from the blood. I don't remember, I lied. Juan's laugh turned sharper. Yes, you do. The hallway light snapped on again, but it wasn't the normal warm glow. It looked sickly like the bulb was dying. In that weak light, the distortion in the doorway thickened and tightened until it almost looked like a person standing there. Almost. My dad stood up fast. The bed shifted, and for a split second, something shifted with it, like the mattress resisted being empty. My dad's voice went louder, angry now because anger was all he had. Get the fuck out of my house. Juan's shape, whatever that was, tilted its head. Your house. It repeated like that was adorable. You brought me in. My dad froze, and I froze because the words hit a memory I tried not to look at. My parents didn't call me Speedy first. One did. It started as a joke between us. I was 8, maybe 9, struggling up the sidewalk with my arms burning, and Juan ran a circle around my chair, making engine noises, laughing, calling me Speedy, Speedy, Speedy. I laughed because it was better than being pitted. Then my dad started using it, like he'd heard it somewhere. I never knew how. Juan's voice softened, like it was telling a bedtime story. He said it first, Juan told my dad. He laughed when I said it. So you kept it. You liked it. My dad's face went pale. He whispered no. Juan's breath brushed the room. That's how it works, it said. Little doors, little openings. You don't feel them until you look back and realize you've been leaving them open for years. My dad backed toward the door without turning his back fully on it. His eyes flicked around like he expected Juan to pop out of the closet, from under the bed, from behind me. He grabbed my remote off the nightstand like it was a weapon. Stupid, but I understood. Light felt like control. Juan laughed again. Lights don't stop me, it said, but they keep you brave. I like that. It makes it more fun. My dad's voice shook. What do you want? Juan's shape seemed to lean closer without actually moving. The air thickened. The cold bit deeper. I want him to remember, Juan said. I remember you. I blurted, and my own voice disgusted me with how desperate it sounded. Okay, I remember. You win. Just. My dad snapped stop. Juan laughed like I'd done something perfect. See, it said. He answers. He always answered. My dad turned on me, eyes wild. Don't talk to it. It's Juan, I said, because the word was a hook in my throat, and I hated that I still used it like it meant friend. Juan's voice went warm. That's right. My dad swallowed hard. Speedy, he said slow, listen. Whatever that is, whatever it's been, if you keep feeding it, it's not going to stop. Juan's tone changed instantly, cold and irritated. Feeding, it repeated, like I'm some animal. He's mine. My dad's jaw clenched. He's my son. Juan laughed once, and the sound made the walls feel farther away. Then why did you lie to him? It asked. Why did you tell him I wasn't real? My dad's face twisted. Because he was scared. Because it sounded insane. Because he didn't want his kid living in a world where something unseen could sit at his bedside. My dad didn't say any of that. He just said, because I was trying to protect him. Juan's voice dropped into a whisper that filled the room. You can't. The room dimmed again. Not fully dark, but like the light was being drained. The corners went thick. The air pressed in. Then the bed dipped hard by my legs, and I felt something cold touch my ankle through the blanket. I can't feel much in my legs sometimes. Nerves are weird, but I felt that. I felt it like someone shoved an ice pack into my bones. It wasn't numbness. It was awareness. It was a message. I can reach you anywhere. I screamed. Ugly raw. I hate that sound even now. My dad lurched toward the bed, hands out, trying to grab what he couldn't see. The blanket yanked downward like something was pulling from the edge. My dad grabbed the blanket and pulled back. For a second, there was a tug of war between my dad and nothing, and the blanket stretched tight, shaking between them. My dad gritted his teeth, leaned back with all his weight, and I heard his shoulder pop like a joint protesting. Let go, he snarled. Juan laf, dilaitif. Stronger than I thought, it said. My dad kept pulling. The blanket jerked again, harder, and my body slid a few inches toward the edge of the bed. My back scraped the sheets. Panic hit like electricity. My dad's feet slipped on the carpet. He almost went down. He caught himself and kept yanking like stubborn mattered more than physics. Then Juan's voice went soft, almost kind. You're gonna hurt yourself, it told my dad. Let him come. My dad roared, no. And in that moment, with my dad fighting something invisible, I remembered something I'd buried so deep I almost convinced myself it never happened. A night when I was little, maybe 7, feverish, half asleep, the room cold, Juan standing by my bed, even though he wasn't supposed to come inside. I remember whispering, don't leave. I remember Juan's hand, cold, on my forehead, and Juan saying, I won't. Not if you keep me. And me, stupid kid me, whispering, okay. That was the promise. Not some spooky contract in blood. Just a kid begging his friend not to go away, and something else accepting it like a deal. My throat tightened. My dad was still pulling, muscles shaking, face red. Juan's voice slid in my ear again, tender and poisonous. Tell him, it whispered. Tell him you asked. My lips trembled. My dad's eyes flicked to my face. He saw something there. He saw the truth forming. Speedy, he said, begging now, don't. I should have shut my mouth. I should have swallowed the memory and let it rot inside me. But I was tired. I was terrified. And part of me wanted my dad to finally understand this wasn't just me being weird. This was real. This had weight. I told him to stay. I whispered. The room went dead silent. My dad stopped pulling like the sentence cut his arms off. His eyes locked on mine. What? Juan laughed softly. The blanket went slack in my dad's hands like whatever was pulling decided it didn't need force anymore. I was a kid, I said, voice shaking. I didn't know. Juan's voice was right there, pleased. You knew enough. My dad's face crumpled, not crying, but something close. He looked like he got hit in the chest. And that's when Juan moved. Not like a person walking, like a thought traveling, like the distortion slid from the doorway to the bedside in one smooth, impossible shift. The mattress dipped beside my hips, heavy. The cold slammed into me, so hard my teeth chattered. My dad flinched backward, eyes wide, staring at the bed like he could finally see the outline in the sheets, the way the blanket rose as if a body sat there. One spoke from inches away, voice low and intimate. Say it again, it murmured. Say you asked me to stay. I squeezed my eyes shut. I could feel my dad's presence across the bed, like a heat source. I could hear him breathing fast, helpless. I'm sorry, I whispered to my dad, to myself, to the kid I used to be. Juan Chakiv. Not to me. My dad took a shaky step forward. Get away from him, he said, and his voice sounded small, and that made me want to scream all over again. My dad is not a small man. He's the kind of guy who fixes things with his hands, who scares solicitors off the porch without raising his voice. Hearing him small meant this thing had been winning longer than we understood. Juan's presence pressed closer to my ear. He can't touch me, it whispered. But you can. My stomach dropped. The trap was so obvious once he saw it. It wanted me to be the one to open the door. It wanted me to say the name. It wanted me to answer, to agree, to keep the pattern alive. My dad's voice went urgent. Speedy, don't talk. Don't answer. Look at me. I opened my eyes. My dad looked wrecked. His fingers were still white at the tips from the cold. His face was pale. He was staring at the bed like it was going to swallow me. He forced himself to look at my eyes. "Listen," he said, and his voice steadied a little like he grabbed onto something inside himself. "You were a kid. You didn't make a deal. You didn't sign anything. You didn't," he swallowed. "You didn't mean it." Juan laughed, and the sound had no humor now. "He meant it," it said. "He meant it every time he said my name." My dad shook his head like he was trying to shake water out of his ears. "No," he said, harsher. "No, he doesn't owe you." Juan's presence pressed down on the bed like weight, like it was settling in to stay. "Then take it back," it said, almost casual. "Tell me to go." I felt my heart stutter, because that was the sickest part. It sounded easy. Tell him to go. Say it. End it. But deep in my chest, some old reflex curled up like a threatened animal. "Don't leave. Don't go. Stay. Stay." Loneliness is a leash, and it had been around my neck since I was a kid. My dad leaned forward, voice rough. "Say it," he told me. "Tell it to leave." Juan's whisper brushed my ear like a lover. "If you tell me to leave," it said, "you'll be alone." My throat closed. My dad saw my hesitation and his eyes flashed with anger. Not at me, but at Juan, at the thing that knew exactly where to stab. "You son of a," he started. Juan laughed. "He can't stand the quiet," it said. "He never could." My eyes stung. I hated that it was true. I hated that my whole life I'd filled silence with my own voice because silence felt like being forgotten. The cold tightened around my ankle again through the blanket. A warning squeeze. Juan's voice went low. "Tell him," it said, "or I'll show him how you kept me." My dad's brows knit. "What does that mean?" I tried to speak and my voice broke. The hall light flickered hard enough to pop, and the bulb died with a soft crack. Darkness rushed in like water, except my room light still glowed weakly, like it was being allowed. One spoke again, clearer now, and it wasn't just one voice. It layered, like a kid's voice over an older voice, over something that didn't sound human at all. "Do you want to hear him?" it asked my dad. My dad's face went tight. "What?" "Juan Chakiv. Do you want to hear your son?" it said. The way I heard him, then the sound came. Not a sound effect, not a ghost moan. My voice. My voice as a kid, laughing, saying one like it was nothing, saying it over and over like a chant. "Juan, Juan, Juan," rapid, excited, like I was calling someone to come play. It came from the corner of my room, near the closet. My dad whipped his head toward it like he'd been slapped. Then another sound layered in. Me crying, older, teenager crying, saying stop lying, saying he's real, saying right there, the exact phrases I'd screamed to my parents. It was like one had collected my words, and now he was playing them back, weaponized. My dad's face went gray. He whispered. "That's you." I felt sick. I felt exposed, like all my private moments had been stored and filed. Juan's presence leaned closer to me. "You kept me," it whispered. "You fed me. Every name, every answer. Every time you waited for me to speak first." My dad's voice went hoarse. "Stop." The sounds kept going, a collage of my life, my voice bouncing around the room like it was trapped in the walls. And under it all, another sound crept in. Soft footsteps on carpet that wasn't being stepped on. The bed dipped again. The blanket tugged again, gentle now, coaxing. Juan's voice went sweet. "Come," it said. My dad lunged forward and grabbed my forearm with both hands. "No," he said, and he meant it with everything in him. "You're not taking him." Juan laughed, and the cold surged so hard my dad's hands jerked away like he touched a live wire. He stumbled back, shaking his fingers, swearing under his breath. I stared at my dad, horrified. He couldn't even hold me without getting burned by the cold. That's when I realized something brutal. One didn't need to drag me anywhere. One just needed me to choose him over everyone else again. To isolate, to keep the secret, to keep the name. The sounds in the room started to fade, like the tape winding down. My childhood laughter dissolved into a low hum. One whispered, "Say it," like a mantra, My dad stood there, breathing hard, eyes darting, trying to find a move. "Speedy," he said, and his voice broke on my nickname like he hated that it might be part of this. "Please." I looked at my dad, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Not frustration, not helplessness, just love, raw love, fearful love. And it hit me that Juan had been there for all my loneliness, yes, but Juan had also been there for every fight, every wedge, every moment I pulled away from the people who actually could hold me. Juan didn't comfort me for free. He cost me things. Slowly, quietly, my mouth opened. Juan's cold pressure tightened on my ankle. My dad took a step closer, hands up like he was approaching a dog. "You can do it," he whispered. "Tell it to leave." My throat burned. The word once sat right there, ready. "Easy, familia." I swallowed it, and instead I said, loud and shaky and ugly, "Get the fuck out." The room snapped colder, like it took offense. Juan's presence stiffened. The mattress dipped deeper for a second, like it shifted its weight in anger. "That's not my name," it whispered, venomous. "I don't care," I said louder. My voice shook, but it was mine. "You're not my friend. You're not staying." The air felt like it pulled tight around my chest, like hands closing. Juan's voice went sharp. "You asked me," it hissed. "I was a kid," I spat. "I didn't know what you were. I take it back. I don't want you." The cold slammed into my face like wind. My room light flickered. The doorway darkened again. I heard that slow breathing, furious now. I heard the floorboards in the hall creak like someone pacing. Juan's voice dropped into my ear, intimate and hateful. "You'll be alone." "Good." I croaked, and tears rolled down my face. "Leave." For a moment, nothing happened. Just pressure. Cold. The sense of something hovering inches away, deciding whether to punish me. Then the bed rose. The mattress lifted like weight leaving. The cold eased. Not gone, but loosened like a grip opening. The doorway distortion thinned, like smoke being sucked out. And then, from the hallway, came one last sound. A child's laugh. Not mine. Not one's old curb laugh. Something else. Something younger. Like a giggle caught in a drain. Then silence. My room warmed slowly. My breath stopped fogging. My hands started to feel my own skin again. My dad exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 10 years. He stumbled forward and sat on the edge of my bed, careful now like the bed might bite. He put his good hand on my shoulder, and it didn't frost. It didn't burn. He whispered, "Are you okay?" I laughed once, ugly. "No," I said. My dad nodded like he accepted that. He didn't try to fix it with words. He just sat there, shaking, hand heavy on my shoulder like an anchor. We stayed like that until sunrise. In the morning, my mom woke up and found us both in my room, my dad still dressed, eyes red. She looked from him to me, and she knew something happened without anyone saying it. My dad didn't tell her details. He just said, "We're not leaving him alone at night anymore." My mom's face tightened. "Did it?" she started. My dad cut her off. "Not now." After that, my parents rearranged schedules. Caretaker shifts. Somebody always nearby. Doors checked. Lights left on in the hallway. The little fences got rebuilt. My dad replaced the bulb and put a brighter one in like brightness was armor. And for a while it worked. Weeks went by, then months. The cold came less. The floor creaks became normal house creaks again. I stopped catching shapes in mirrors. I stopped pausing mid-thought waiting for an answer. I almost let myself believe I'd won. But here's the part that keeps me from sleeping even now. One didn't vanish like smoke. He didn't scream and evaporate. He didn't leave a curse. He didn't drag me into the dark. He withdrew, like someone stepping behind a door they already have a key to. Sometimes late, when the house is quiet and my brain starts filling the silence out of habit, I feel that old pause trying to happen again. That half second where the air listens. Sometimes the room drops a couple degrees for no reason and I catch the smell. Wet concrete, winter storm drain. Sometimes the floor creaks once softly right beside my bed, like someone testing whether the weight is still welcome. And the worst part is, I don't always know if the voice in my head is mine until it's already talking. If you have questions, ask them. I'll try to answer. Just nothing too personal